All right, hopefully this is not crooked. But an update on the. Sorry, I have stuff on me. Been trying to clean off these little black and green and blues. You just see so much cat hair and dust and dog hair. It's crazy. We have 3 cats and 2 dogs, so it's just. And a hamster and 2 hermit crabs. Yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, so updates in terms of Tacoma and developers and things like that. We've had a couple of projects or 3 that have been stalled, right? There have been others that were supposed to happen and then the deal fell through and all of that. I don't, know too much about some of these others, but I will talk about the Tacoma Town Center. The Tacoma Town Center was going to be an amazing thing, for Tacoma, because downtown Tacoma does not have really this central retail space. It really doesn't have that. You have a lot of fragmented buildings, and then even then you have property owners that just sit on property and allow it to just be a loss on taxes. They do that on purpose, and yet the city does not do anything to stop that, which I feel that they should. There's cities that do that. Everett, for example, that basically say you can't just leave a space vacant. It doesn't help the city. It makes Tacoma look bad. But at any rate, developers and anybody will do anything if you allow them to do it. But these retail spaces could be activated, which will bring more people downtown, which brings more money to the city and all the things, right? All the things that people want. I think the idea has been, or this is my belief, is that one day some big company is going to come in and put a regional office in. And I laugh at that because you have people who have multiple millions of dollars. And I'll get to these other projects, but they have multiple millions of dollars and they've been developing for decades. And still, it's like they don't quite understand certain aspects. And I look at it from the small business owner aspect, where that if you don't have other small businesses nearby thriving, then you're not going to get big giant corporate offices. I don't care if you build, Sears Tower in downtown Tacoma, which is now the Willis Tower. You're not going to get a bunch of big corporate offices coming in. Just isn't going to happen. Tacoma has to have a better environment, for small business. And if you don't have that component, then you're not going to get those things. Some of the big issues are vacant storefronts. You're not going to get a big company coming in. Because it's neglect and blight and all the other issues. You're better off having an old dilapidated building. It's the same as having a dilapidated building when you have these empty storefronts block after block. The other piece of that is that the developers rely on these realtors. And realtors don't go headhunting. They just sit and field calls. And then if something strikes, then they work out the paperwork. But as far as them actually headhunting, that's not what they do. So you have spaces that will sit empty because, again, if the small businesses that have been trying to make it work can't figure it out because there's such a heavy burden on them, and even things like the grease trap, that only hurts Tacoma. That's a compiling issue because as soon as restaurants go out of business, then that's it. You don't have a lot of mom and pops. You have corporates that come in. And that's what some people are waiting for. But you lose it's just like Seattle. You lose your vibe as a city when that happens. We have so much outside investment in terms of the retail landscape as far as the eatery landscape. You start to lose your vibe, and that's what's going to happen to Tacoma because we have such a very overtly strict and oppressive, in my opinion, grease trap thing. It could be a lot easier, but it requires the city actively pursuing it, and it requires enforcement to make sure that city staff is not overhanding being overhanded in this, and that we automatically want a different way of approach of handling and approving food operations. It should not be the way that it is. That's for certain. But not my circus, not my clowns, right? I say that when it comes to developers that don't listen and they have vacant space and they could easily get stuff in there. And these are the ones that actively are trying to. But again, if you don't make prices reasonable, given all the other uncertainties and issues, nobody's coming in. And again, not my circus, not my clowns. They'll figure it out. But there are other areas like the Dome District that's doing very, very well. And had the town center finished, it probably would have brought in a lot of different retailers, which is what they want. Stores want to be next to other stores. They don't want to just be a standalone. And if there's vacant stores and they're not next to something, they're not coming. It doesn't matter if it's Midtown Manhattan. If there's not other crap next to it, they're not going to do it. And so it's a compounding issue, as I said. And I've looked into it a lot. I've worked with some of these companies. They're not coming. Like Nordstrom is never going to come to downtown Tacoma because there's not the synergy. There's not retail after retail after retail after retail. There just isn't. You have retail and then you have empty space, empty space, empty space, retail, empty space, retail, 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 empty space. You have a lot of that. And so they just, even in big cities where one big store pulls out, eventually some of the others start dropping off too. Why? Because that synergy is gone. You have to build up. And not only build up vertically, but you have to build up your retail environment. So you have to pretty much make sure the developer's not going crazy. And the town center is one of those opportunities. But the developer, Galena Equity, doesn't have the money. They don't have the money to do what they were doing in Idaho, and nobody knows where they are. I guess as far as who to, maybe they know where they are, but they're just not responding. So there's liens on part of the property, and eventually it's going to go into foreclosure if the original owner, Galena Equity, does not pay certain amounts of money. And then once that happens, the county will probably just sell it. So that's going to either be the end of this year or start of next year. And then you have to wait and see if somebody buys it. And you got to figure out what the economy is going to be like. You got to figure out. So it's a major setback. I think that the city approving this to begin with was a bad mistake. And again, I think that we have to stop using popularity in Tacoma versus sensibility. And I think that goes with everything, whether it's businesses, whether it's governments, whatever. Popularity seems to be the big thing versus people that automatically will make a difference. And so as long as we still have that small town, brotherly type, thing, you're going to see slow progress. And the town center was an opportunity where we could have had local developers actually get involved and build different pieces. This could have been something where you don't just sell all this together and say, here we go. It is you have a concept, you have a theme, you have what you're really wanting to be there. What we really need is either a bowling alley or a roller skating rink. We need that, or a movie theater. Those are things that attract people for a long period of time. You need several different eateries, probably a food hall or two would be great, a brewery, several different stores. Actually headhunt for various different stores to bring them in. Bring in a couple of national brands, talk to some of the franchise owners and say, we'll give you a sweetheart deal. Bring in, whatever. Put them in those spaces. Try to talk to some of the bigger chains. There are big corporate entities that would listen if they had some sort of entity that would speak to them. And I know that for a fact because I've done it. When I worked for this particular entity, I reached out to that franchise corporation, and they were willing to bring something to downtown Tacoma. It didn't happen because there was not follow through. And it wasn't on my account. So it's stuff like that becomes a problem. But the town center is now going to basically go into foreclosure. and we'll see what happens. On a positive note, Trax, remember, that has been a long-standing issue too. They built the podium and then it stopped. The original developer ran out of money, and so the lender reclaimed it and finished the podium part, and they try to sell it. It's going to be hard-pressed to sell, and I knew that. You're not going to sell a podium of a pre-designed thing typically and somebody pick it up on a project that big, because they want to do it the way they want to do it. If I have a vision of what I want to build with my own money, I have a vision. I don't want to take somebody else's work and try to do it. It just doesn't work. So my thought was the original lender should have went on ahead back when prices were a little bit cheaper and build the damn thing and then sell it later. And so they didn't do that, but now they are. And so they're going to increase the size of the actual structure itself. I forget the number of square foot, but it's going from a little under 100, well, it was about 100, a little over 100 and something units to now 202 units, which is significant. Because if you want an idea of the size of this, Cornice House, which is just now completed in downtown Tacoma, it's right there on 25th and Pacific at that corner, that holds 199 units, right? So 3 less than what Trax is going to hold. That same developer that built Cornice House is building Artibus right kind of over a little bit. And that's going to hold 200 units exactly. So still, Trax will be bigger by 2 when it looks at Artibus. And Artibus is a large project. And the construction on that's going to start soon, right? The construction on Trax is going to start in June of this year. That's great news for the Dome District, because the property owner and the lender has the money, $20 million to build it. That's nothing for them, and they'll build it and then they'll sell it, which is the smart thing to do, because people will buy a finished building, but they won't buy one that's unfinished and they have to finagle with it. Not in this part of the country or in this city, but New York, Chicago, yeah, not here. So they're going to finish that building and then sell it. Now, the bottom portion was going to be a giant farmer's market. That seems to have changed. And they're now focusing on it being live-work units. I hope they still keep some retail components to it, because we really need it. When the sounder station is built in that general area, you're going to have a ton of people that are going to be walking and roaming around. So that would be a good thing to have. But the Dome District is really doing well. I'm investing more in the Dome District myself. I have another project I'm doing outside of the studio there. And it's a great place to do business, in my opinion. Right now, if you are in the Dome District, let's say you went back, you were here 15 years ago, never been back, and you come to the Dome District, you're like, damn, wow, right? But if you left a year ago, you're like, okay, there's some stuff going on. I would imagine in the next couple of years, when people come to the Dome District, they're going to be like, whoa, completely different place. And the reason why I say that is because of all of the apartment buildings that are being planned and that are actually going up. Trax is being one of them. The skate park that will be going in, also this summer, that will get started. And just a lot of other things that are going on. The Dome District is really starting to grow and in importance. And I think that, it's got a lot of energy, has a lot of energy. The one thing I do worry about is the lack of retail. Now, Freight House Square, which could be ran better and look better and all that, and I have spaces in Freight House Square, it could serve as that retail component, but it has to level up in terms of the offerings that it has, the businesses that are there. And I think that it could definitely do it. There are other retail spaces around in that general area that can help. Coe's was one of the first multi-unit projects in the Dome District, and they have square footage down below. It's a cold shell, but they have it. So there's that. There are other places where you have a little bit of retail here and there, and I think it would do well given what we have. And then these new buildings going up will also have retail. So I think that the Dome District, to be honest with you, and this is not counting other places like the Lincoln District and Hilltop and all that, because that's different. But if you're comparing it to downtown versus the Dome District, I think the Dome District is going to be a completely different place. And I think it's going to rival parts of downtown in terms of just the number of people. Already, it is one of the busiest places in the city because you have all of the transit that's there. People say, huh? But you really do. You have Amtrak, you have two different lines of Amtrak. So that large volume of people. You have the Sounder commuter train letting off tons of people. You have the huge parking garages that are there. You have the Link Light Rail. You have the city bus line over there. Eventually, you're going to have the Link Light Rail from Seattle there, dumping people out. So it is the busiest, one of the busiest areas in the city in terms of foot traffic and pedestrians, and that's only going to grow. And I think the Dome, the Tacoma Dome, is also another big contributor to that load of people. So to be honest with you, I think that folks will start to feel more of a city vibe in terms of vibrancy in the Dome District, where you don't have all those vacant storefronts as much. You don't have all of that stuff. And there's more of a willingness to keep businesses going and afloat, and businesses can afford the Dome District. It's just making sure you get in time, because if you wait too long, prices are going to go up. But anyhow, that's to give you an update. Trax is on schedule to continue construction. They don't have a full timeline of when it will be completed, but construction starts in June. That's great. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully this gets completed. 202 units are going to go into that. Right up the street, less than a half a mile away, is the Cornice House, which has 199 units. Then you have also in that same area, Artemis, which adds another 200 units. So you're talking well over 1,000 people just in that tiny, tiny area where there was zero before. Tell me what your thoughts are. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.